0, 4, 3, 1, 0, 1. This is not the nuclear launch code for the United States. No. Those are the amount of non-South Korean Overwatch League players on the championship winning teams in every season. And a lot of the time, those guys didn't even get to play. This puts the average for a championship team at just 1.5 whiteboards. We see the same things in League of Legends and StarCraft, where despite not winning all the time, it's at such a point that when a non-Korean guy won the biggest StarCraft tournament for the first time, it was like front page news and was considered to be one of the most impressive gaming feats of all time. There are three main reasons why people think that South Koreans are so incredibly dominant in these games. First, some people think it has to do with genetics, and that might not be as crazy as it sounds. Decay was at one point the best player in all of Overwatch. He was, for at least a time, the best Zarya player in the world with the Washington Justice, and before that, he was a great DPS player. In fact, he was so good that his coach called him a genetic aim freak. In fact, many pro players such as Steel and Shazam believe that genetics have an impact on aim in general. The average human's reaction time is around 273 milliseconds. You can test it right now on Human Benchmark and you'll probably get around that level. This is mine by the way, but that's because I'm the GOAT and I'm not like the rest of you. Most pros in aim-dependent games like Valorant and Counter-Strike fall around the 180 to 200 millisecond mark, and while practicing can help you reduce your reaction time, it isn't actually an effective difference because you can train to click a button at a certain time, but you can't train yourself to take in and react to many different stimulus like you would encounter in a video game. This is the difference between general reaction time, which is clicking the button when it changes color, versus effective reaction time, which is how fast we can actually process information and make a decision. On the other hand, playing video games frequently actually can help you to reduce your reaction time, even outside of gaming. The differences may not be crazy, but yes, it actually does make a difference. The problem is, that might lead to a situation where the rich get richer. This study is complicated and nerdy, but yes, reaction time is between 25 and 35% dependent on genetics, and they measure that with the appearance of a certain gene. So many pro players who are born with more of that gene continue playing more video games and further decreasing their effective reaction time. This all comes back to the Korean problem, as it has been proven that East Asians do have a low, but statistically significant reaction time advantage over people of other backgrounds. And at the highest level of gaming, when everyone has a great reaction time, that might make all the difference. There was also a study done on Korean teenagers that studied the links between their genetics and their addiction to video games. With over 74% of Koreans playing video games, it doesn't seem like a crazy idea, and it was noted that the CRHR1 gene, which is more prominent in Korean adolescents than others, can actually impact addiction and dependence on video games. Others argue that gaming has almost nothing to do with genetics. Yes, reaction time can impact how good you are at games, but it can be trained through repetition. I mean, it's logical that you can make quicker decisions in a game after you've experienced the same situations or similar ones over and over again. Even beyond that, many professional Overwatch players specifically come from families with no background of having even above average reaction time. I will cover more from this article later, but players like Exy, who is at times touted as a genetic aiming talent, is the son of a bus mechanic. Yolbi, one of the best players of all time on the most ADHD reaction time intensive character in the game, Tracer, must have worked as like a spy or something before he started playing in the league because of his crazy genetic gift. Nope. He was a barista, and his dad was a cab driver. All this really calls into question the credibility of the claims that genetics is the main factor of Korean dominance. But even professional players question this notion. Shazam, a professional Valorant player who said that genetics have some impact at the highest level, claimed that people could never identify a difference between 50 milliseconds in reaction time. So while Mohammed Wang, statistically the most average named man in the world, may have a 270 millisecond reaction time, it could never be quantified to any reasonable level if that made him worse at video games. It all seems to be correlation without causation, as yes, Koreans do have different genes, but people from all around the world can have any selection of random genes at a higher level. Michael Phelps was so genetically gifted that he was basically cheating in swimming, and America wasn't even known as an incredibly dominant swimming nation before he was born. Genetic mutations can appear anywhere. The genetics claim has as much validity as me saying that Koreans are so good at video games because they consume the most liquor or output the most Samsung products. So are Koreans the best at video games because of genetics? Probably not. It can definitely make an impact with things like general reaction time, but in terms of effective reaction time and game sense, anyone can get to a high level with enough of a time commitment. And if the answer really was genetics, then why isn't there a North Korean faker already? Other people say that it has to do with work ethic. South Korea has some of the longest working hours in the world, and it has been that way for a long time. The work ethic even transferred to video games though, as in Korea, gaming is actually embraced as a type of career. Obviously, having pros who are already well established and wealthy helps parents feel better about their kids pursuing gaming as a career. But this system existed even before there were a lot of pro gamers in the world. For many Korean families, esports is the way out. So many top Korean players come from absolutely nothing. Gaming is a legitimate option to get families out of hard times or even deep poverty. One example is the Overwatch legend of Freak of Beast Exy, who I mentioned earlier, who grew up lower class with his father being a bus mechanic, or Yolbi, who is incredibly jacked now by the way. All of these families were low income, and gaming and PC bongs were an affordable way to keep kids entertained. The most famous example by far though has to be Faker. He grew up in a single parent household where he lived close to the poverty line. He even said that his father was not worried about his grades, but instead at the electricity bill his son was running up for playing League of Legends all the time. If my kid was driving me further into debt to play dumbass League of Legends, you know what, I would be mad too regardless of how it all turned out. The other side of the coin of work ethic can be a lot darker. Yes, it is a way out for some. but some just take it too far. Laurie was the head coach of the Boston Uprising from 2020 to 2022. He had been in the Overwatch scene for a long time as a coach, and had recently led WGS Phoenix to some success in Korean contenders. This guy was used to success, and the Uprising were not. They sucked really bad, and this coach hiring was a way to try to get the team back to work. Here's one of his players, Punk, describing his methods.
He'd make us do laps. He wouldn't let me eat. He had all of us. Mate, he did. He put.
What do
I
you
was
mean he wouldn't
fit,
let you
man. Like we were running. I wasn't eating. We would do 3-hour VOD reviews where we'd have to be in a push-up plank position.
What?
Hang on.
So he'd call us in. We'd watch the whole map like really slowly. It took one map for 1 hour, and as soon as one of us did a mistake or something, and he'd ask, he'd be like, "What'd you do wrong?" And unless you gave him exactly what you wanted, exactly what he wanted, or to be honest, it probably wouldn't even matter. He would say, "Get down," and then I was like, "What?"
Whoa.
If you want to avoid running laps at the hands of a Korean gentleman, make sure you like this video and subscribe for more inspired Overwatch content. You can also become a member to support me making more videos. Anyway, he once also made the team keep playing the same map of Watchpoint Gibraltar all night until 4 in the morning because they kept making slight positional mistakes. These methods helped the Uprising improve to a 42.5% win rate over the next 2 years, which I guess was an improvement over their previous 9.5%. So hey, maybe there is a method to his madness. So ultimately, does it have to do with work ethic? I would say it's a part of it, but that just fits into the larger thing that I really think has to do most with Korean success in the world of gaming. There are people with insane work ethics from all around the world, and it would be unfair to say that Koreans are so good at Overwatch and League just because they work harder than everyone else, because they wouldn't really be true. Smurf is one of the best tank players of all time, and I saw him chiefing a vape outside the arena at playoffs in 2023 instead of reviewing games. So what do I think is the biggest factor in Korean video game dominance? Well, I think it has a lot to do with how affordable and accessible gaming is alongside how seriously they take it. PC bongs are a staple of Korean gaming, and therefore, they affect gaming across the entire world. These PC bongs are so popular that when StarCraft 2 first released in them, the player count grew 173.48%. There are around 20,000 PC bongs in the country, and they offer a very affordable way for kids to enjoy themselves. In Korea, cram schools and private tutors are part of the culture. I'm sure we've all seen that video about Korean school kids' 16-hour days, and in a lot of ways, that's real. But that video only reflects the reality for the richest Korean citizens. Many lower-income children and teenagers cannot afford these programs, and so they turn to cheap entertainment options like PC Bong. This is exactly how players across almost every game got started, from Flash to Faker and from Lakia to Prophet. In fact, Prophet's first team, GC Busan, was started in a PC bong in Busan. Gaming is a socially acceptable hobby and a way for people to genuinely improve the conditions of their life. These guys also take esports very seriously, and to put it into perspective, I'm going to tell you 2 stories. They are both about Overwatch, and the first one has to do with one of the best support players to ever come up in the Overwatch League. Every single team wanted to sign him, and eventually he landed with the Atlanta Reign. But before he could be signed, they had to look a little extra into his past, and they discovered that he'd been boosting accounts to make a little extra money before he signed his contract. Literally every single professional player does this. Because payments are usually both low and late, contracts can be hard to come by, and teams can literally cease to exist with no warning. I'm looking at you, Vancouver. This went against the rules of the league, however, and Funny Astro was eventually suspended for 10 games before going on to become one of the best support players of all time. No harm, no foul. The second story is about a group of 6 people who worked as account boosters in Overwatch. They were young and hungry teenagers, and going into their 20s, they created this boosting company together. Things were going well, and between all of them, they were able to make around 30,000 USD each over around 2 years. Well, earlier in their operation, a law was revised in Korea banning the quote, obstruction of a game's normal operation, and boosting fell into that category. Eventually, someone slipped up, and their operation was discovered. All 6 men were jailed and fined 20 million won or $18,000 each. I guess at least it was still profit. Though the Korean police did make sure that they paid their fair share of taxes for their ill-gotten gains. Beyond that, Sato, who was another professional Overwatch player who boosted accounts between contracts, was suspended 30 games in the Overwatch League, while Sparkle was suspended 6 months by his teammate contenders Element Mystic to make an example out of him for boosting accounts. He was the best player on the planet, and he was literally 15 years old. That's how seriously they take boosting in Korea. We Americans don't have that culture, and that is why the average Overwatch League champion has approximately 0.83 Americans. kellyGDH Jr. is going to be on that computer all day and all night. I'm not going to say the culture can't be damaging though, as it almost caused one of the best tank prospects ever to quit the game entirely. Here's Gator to explain.
Like Donghak, he came in and bro, he would just I would just see him crying like all the time, and I'd have to just talk to him every day. He had more pressure on him than anybody else, but there's also this balance of I've seen it a million different times with these Korean main tanks. I mean, you can think of all the different ones on all the different teams. They're all zero and flops because this 18-year-old Korean main tanks. He was 17, just turned 17 too, by the way. Like he's an actual kid. They come in these teams and they actually just get bullied and harassed. they get told you're not good enough, just fucking quit. Don't come back tomorrow. We want somebody else, right? But and all that does is lead to them like failing.
So while it can be effective, it can also cause a lot of harm to players permanently and even lead to bullying. But with all this, I think it's safe to say that for all these reasons, Koreans are dominant in video games. Even though they literally have a timer on how long they can play due to mandatory military service, they still enjoy their time shitting on the rest of the world. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I imagine myself as a beautiful Korean woman who has a true zest for life, you know what I mean? Like, she wants to keep going. I just wish I had that spark like I used to when I was younger, you know? I guess that's part of getting older. Losing it all. Losing that sparkle. The realities of life set in and you realize it's just you. No one's coming to save you, really. When it comes down to it, all you have is yourself. Not that beauteous Korean woman, but the person you are when you open your eyes. Sorry, anyways, a portion of the proceeds from this video will be donated to the California Fire Foundation, a group where the fire is going on right now, and something similar happened just a few years ago. It's completely devastating, and I know I took too long with this video, and they're probably put out by now, but I ask you to donate as well at the link below if you have extra.